And welcome into this week's edition of The Locker Room with Gerhard Mathangani. I'm Chase Robinson. Got a lot to talk about today, a lot going on in college football. Plus, we'll go one-on-one with Cleveland County head coach Michael Short. But first, Gerhard, let's talk some college football.
Yep.
Let's start with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Rough start for them against Arkansas, but we're able to finish that game strong.
Yeah, we were worried about a hangover effect after the Georgia game, and it kind of showed itself there in that first half. But Jake Coker in the offense, and really the defense put it together all game long. It wasn't the kind of game that we thought we would see last year with that 14-13, a real close game. Alabama really put it together late, but I think it was what the offense was able to do behind Coker, Calvin Ridley, and some of those guys.
You know, Arkansas struggled at the beginning of this season. What did you see from them in this game that kept them in this game?
Well, their ability to run the football has been really strong. I know they only rushed for 44 yards, but it seemed like in key drives they were able to keep the chains moving. The thing about Arkansas that impressed me was their defense, especially in the first half. Their defense seems really strong, and Nick Saban even alluded to it that their defense is much improved. A lot of the same players are back from last year. I think they have something to build upon on that defense.
The Crimson Tide have Texas A&M this week, and here's what Nick Saban had to say on Monday.
You know, a lot of areas where we can improve based on just basic fundamental execution. And, you know, we've always had a system around here of, you know, here's what you need to do, here's how you need to do it, here's why it's important to do it that way, and you got to have the discipline to execute it, you know, down in and down out. And I just think we need to continue to improve, you know, in that area so we can focus on getting things right, and we won't have some of the negative plays that we're having on both sides of the ball.
Alabama at Texas A&M, 2:30 on Saturday on CBS. Now over to JSU, coming off the off week, back into OVC play with Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, this is a rested team. JSU needed this rest, and it really comes at the perfect time of the year. It's right in the middle of the season, and they're going to Cookeville, Tennessee, which is a tough place to play. So I think it's a good challenge for them. But JSU right now, overall, I just think they're too strong for just about everybody in this league outside of maybe EIU, and we'll see them later on in the season. But what JSU is able to accomplish up until this point, I think last week's game or the last time they were on the field really showed them they got to play 48 minutes, and they really did against Mississippi Valley State. This is another big game in conference. I think they'll take care of business.
They've done so well at the beginning of the season. Is there any way this off week could mess them up at all?
I don't think so. I think that there were a lot of players were kind of hobbled, and they got a lot of those players back. And I think what the break really did for them was help them refresh. And I think that if it was a situation where they got the week off before last week's game, before the Mississippi Valley State game, then I think that this could be a trap kind of game. But they were able to refocus themselves, play well against Mississippi Valley State, so I think they're able to bounce into this week.
Well, Coach John Gross spoke with us this week as they head on the road again this weekend.
Well, at OVC, it's tough to go play on the road. You know, we'd much rather be playing at home in front of our crowd and in our environment, you know. But to go on the road and play, that's a tough place to play up there at Cooksville. And like I said, we just got to do a job and, you know, find a way to get better in practice this week and play well.
JSU will head up to Tennessee Tech at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Now to the Auburn Tigers, coming off an off week as well.
Right.
And what many would say a much-needed off week.
Yeah, they did need it, and for so many reasons. For injury reasons for guys like Carl Lawson, but also for just stability reasons. It seems like they just could not get the right footing as far as their quarterback goes, their offense goes, everything that's happened with Duke Williams, and that's been well documented. I just think that this Auburn team needed the bye week probably more than any other team in the country, and now they really have a strong footing to say we can create what we want to create with this season. Of course, they can't have the aspirations that they wanted to at the beginning of the year, but they can still kind of bounce back and make this the game that is their launching point to the rest of the year to spring into 2016.
How much will the off week help as they prepare for a Thursday night game?
I think it does a lot for them because it didn't make them play on Saturday, giving them not that short week that most teams would get. You see that a lot in college and in the NFL. They give them a long time to prep for Kentucky. So even though they did have the off week, it's really just an exaggerated longer week to get ready for Kentucky. Not a full 2 weeks, but 10 days, 11 days to get rested up and get ready for a very, very good Kentucky team at home.
And here's what Gus Malzahn told us this week.
Off week was very, very good to us. It was good to have as far as from a coach's standpoint, a player's standpoint, getting a plan together. for the second part of the season.
And again, Auburn, the Thursday night game, 6 p.m. on ESPN. We got more college football talk coming up, but on the other side of the break, Coach Michael Short of Cleveland County sits down with Mickey Shattuck. Stay with us in the locker room.
And welcome back to the locker room. We come to you now from inside the locker room here at Cleveland County High School, where it's time to go one-on-one with Tiger head coach Michael Short. Coach, feels like deja vu. Last year, you were getting ready to play Sacs about this time of year in the 4A Region 6 championship game. Here we are a year later, same situation. Talk about the big matchup with the Wildcats this week.
Well, we're excited about being able to have just an opportunity to play another game. And the fact that it's for the region championship makes our kids excited. I'm just so proud of our kids and our coaches for getting to this point. The year didn't start out well with a loss to Munford, but it was a close ball game, and we knew that we had a chance to be pretty good, and our kids have worked extremely hard. We've overcome some injuries, and maybe those kids will all be ready to go Friday night when we're playing at Sacs. So, we're excited about playing for a region championship, but, in the big scheme of things, it's just the next ball game for us to play.
Last year, you won this game by 14 points. That's a lot of points against a good Sacs team, but I think as impressive to me was you held them to 20. Very similar team for them as it was last year. They've got a lot of playmakers, a lot of guys at skill positions that can hurt you. What's the formula for slowing them down again this year?
Don't let them have it. That was our big goal last year, was to control the line of scrimmage and try to keep the ball away from their explosive offense. Last year we told our kids their quarterback's going to make a lot of plays. He's going to get his 200 yards rushing, but our goal was to not let him have those 60 and 70-yard runs for touchdowns, and we didn't do that. So we limited the number of explosive plays they have, which we'll have to do again this year, and we'll have to keep them off the field. And that means offensively we got to do a great job up front of keeping the ball away from them. I think we rushed last year for over 300 yards. That means the clock's running, which is important when you play them, and you got to keep it away from them because they do go so high tempo and they try to run so many plays, and we try to limit them to less than 60 plays.
You both are similar to last year's teams, similar makeup. Both teams lost their week 1 games. You lost to Munford. They lost to Wellborn. Since then, you've both gone undefeated. Talk about what you've seen from them as the year has progressed. Is there anything you can learn from that Wellborn game? They slowed them down too, and they held them out of the end zone a good bit. What do you see from the Wildcats over the course of the last several weeks?
Just like watching Wellborn, they had some long drives for touchdowns, which means the clock was running, which limits the number of plays that they have, and we're going to have to do that. They're so much more improved in their kicking game this year than they were last year. They've got a good punter. They've got a guy now that does extra points. So you don't know. Last year it was they go for 2 every time, and if they don't get it, you feel like you've gotten 1 point up on them. So this year they throw a guy out there that kick extra points and he's good at it, or they can go for 2 like they always have. So that's a concern for us, and they've got a good punter. They throw the ball better this year than they did last year. Last year there was more run. Now they're mixing it up, so they're a lot more balanced on offense. So that's a big concern for us defensively, is how balanced they are on offense.
Coach, you're having yourself another great season here at Heflin, despite what happens on Friday night. You're in your 18th year here now. You're on the verge of taking Heflin to the playoffs for the 14th time in those 18 years. You've got 6 region championships to your credit as head coach. But during the offseason, I know you had some distractions. Won't get into great detail about what occurred because some of that stuff has been well documented. But needless to say, it was enough of a distraction that it affected your time with your kids. It affected your off-season preparation work all the way up to fall camp. Also left a lot of coaches wondering what was going to happen going into this season. But you haven't missed a beat. It looks like a typical Cleveland County season, even though it wasn't a typical Cleveland County offseason.
Well, to me, that shows a lot of credit to our players and all my assistant coaches for keeping things together when I was out. This past summer, I knew things were going to be okay when we went about 2 weeks and we weren't practicing and weren't doing anything with our kids, but our kids were practicing on their own. and our senior class. I'm so proud of them. They pulled everybody together and said, we're not going to let this get us down. We're going to find a way to get out there and practice and make ourselves better. The city opened up their facilities for our kids to practice on, so they did it on their own, not even on school property, so that made it legal. So I'm just so pleased at what our kids have done so far to keep us going. And, it really just shows that it's not about one person. It's about Cleveland County football, and it's about what you see around this room here. Tradition starts here when you walk out the door, and when you walk in the door the last time you ever play here, you'll see that the tradition that you were a part of will never graduate. You'll always be a part of it.
When times are tough, you find out really who's with you. And I think you found out in talking to you throughout this situation, you got a lot of people with you.
They deserve to be able to work and not have to worry about who's going to be coming over here and saying, why ain't you doing this? Why ain't you doing that? Set forth the agenda. Pay these people what they're worth. And let them go about doing their job, because they're great men and great women that's doing this job right now.
Not only in the community, former players that are with you, that have backed you. I don't know what stronger statements you can have when you go through tough times, when guys you've been in the trenches with back you like a lot of your players did.
Former players that I have coached as an assistant or as a head coach. I had almost 40-something guys from Georgia that had called me and were going to get in a bus and come up here to be with me, and that was special. And all the people that I've been around or had a part of helping to coach them or mold them. So many people call me. Actually, I think deep down inside it's made me a better person, because now it kind of humbled me to the point where I got to the point where, do people even care? Do those guys that you coach every day, 20 years ago, do they even remember? Did we make a difference? And, I know now that we do make a difference. And I think good Lord put me through that just to show me that we are making a difference. And don't give up. Just dig harder and fight harder and just go stronger. And that's what this team has done. We have found a way somehow to get over the distractions and to go forward and just do what Cleveland County does, and that's do the best we can. We're going to play hard every day and do the best we can, and whatever happens, happens.
And great interview there. Thanks again to Coach Michael Short of Cleveland County. And guys, what a game we have in store for us this Friday night between Cleveland County and Sachs.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be one of those where Sachs has all the motivation coming back, but Cleveland County, as Mickey alluded to in the interview, they've been there, and this is one of those things that this Cleveland County team just finds ways to win, and this is one of those games where they do find a way to win.
Yeah, we were talking during the break. This is maybe the hardest game we're picking this week, because this is really could go either way. These two teams right back where they were last year at this time.
And Gerhard, I know you and I got to go over there this summer when they were having the difficulties with the pay and everything.
Right.
How has that shaped this Cleveland County team to you?
I think I'm going to reiterate what Coach said. He said that the team galvanized, the assistant coaches came together, and they found out that, there might be some people in the community that have their own opinions and their own agendas, and that did not deter this football team and this athletic community altogether from doing what they wanted to do and making sure that they had all the pieces in place to do what they wanted to do. They were looking 6 weeks, 10 weeks into the future. They understood that as soon as everything got settled out, they had football games to play. They had missed about 2-3 weeks, close to a month. They got it all together, and the results are showing on the field.
Yeah, again, as I mentioned in the interview, they're having a typical Cleveland County season, even though they didn't have a typical offseason. Don't know why you want to mess with that, but I'm glad they're having success on the field after what the kids went through in the offseason.
Again, thanks again to Coach Michael Short and Cleveland County for sitting down with Mickey Shaddricks. Coming up next is the Locker Room Roundtable plus our Pick 6. So stay with us here on the Locker Room. And we're back in the locker room with Mickey Shaddricks, Gerhard Mathengani. I'm Chase Robinson. It's time for the Locker Room Roundtable. A lot has happened in college football over the past few days, starting with the head ball coach, Steve Spurrier, resigning mid-season. Gerhard, what are your thoughts on that?
He's one of the most influential people to ever touch college football. 228 wins, and he's second only to Bear Bryant in the SEC. And the fun and gun, you go back, he's the best coach at 3 different programs. I mean, think about that for a second. At Duke and at Florida and at South Carolina. He's one of those people that even when he resigned, and it looks like he did it the same way Bobby Petrino did it, just in the middle of the year, people still find ways to love him. And I think that's kind of been the calling card of his career. And I hate to see him go. He's been one of the more entertaining figures in college football. But I understood from the platform that he said that this is what's best for South Carolina, and I believe it.
He's the only coach I know of that's done something like this and made it look graceful and got applauded for it. But really the truth is he's quitting on the team in the middle of the season, and he should be called out for that, in my opinion. I think the reason that he's getting a pass in a lot of circles is because, and this is a compliment to him, he's a straight shooter. And in a politically correct world that we live in, it's refreshing to have a straight shooter.
Right.
And that's why he's getting treated a little differently despite what he's done.
Yeah.
Is he done coaching yet?
Oh, no. No. Like, guys like him, they can't get away from football. Nick Saban said one thing in a recent interview where he talked about being a part of a team since he was like 9 years old. And that's how a lot of these coaches are. They've been a part of a team atmosphere for forever. So he can play all the golf he wants to and fish and all of that. He just wants to stay around football, around the periphery. The same thing Brett Favre wants to do. He'll find somewhere, some high school, some JUCO to stay around the game because this guy will not quit on football.
I hope he winds up coaching high school. He mentioned that kind of jokingly in the press conference, but it would be just like him to do something like that.
Right.
Another coach this week, Steve Sarkisian from USC, getting fired for some things showing up intoxicated to the game and meetings. But this happened in August as well. Should something have been done in August?
We can play the result now and say, yeah, something should have been done. And I think I was one of the people that kind of passed it off as, you know, a guy made a poor decision then, and he paid for it then, and just kind of blew it off. But then later on, as you find out that the assistant coaches think he's been drunk at meetings and stuff like that, you feel bad for the guy on a personal level, and you hope he gets everything together put personally. But at this point, you got to look at Pat Hayden and say, where are you going with this program? What are you doing with these hires? Because he's now 0 for 2 in football with Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian.
You know, a lot of coaches over the years and even now, we probably wouldn't approve of all their behavior if we knew what was really going on. I think obviously the big issue here is he brought it to the workplace, and that's when it became an issue that Pat Hayden had to deal with.
Another big issue in college football: Florida quarterback Will Grier suspended this week. What's that going to do for the Florida-LSU game this week? You
know, according to Vegas, the line went from minuscule to over a touchdown. And I think what this does with the Gators, it puts the ball in Treon Harris's hands. I just don't know if he's got enough. And what Will Grier was able to do with this team is make them into a national contender. I just think that Florida, I think they lose in Death Valley. And I think they lose big in Death Valley because of this. And I honestly don't know how much they bounce back. This is a big test for them mid-year.
I think they've obviously with Jim McElwain and Nussmeier there, they've got offensive coaches that know what they're doing. I just don't know if they can adjust this quickly because this hit them quick.
Yeah.
You know, we had a lot of stuff come down on Monday in college football. I don't remember a Monday that had this much big news happening. I don't know if they can get ready this quick, but I think they'll be okay as the season progresses. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's move over to Major League Baseball now. Chase Utley suspended 2 games for his slide into Ruben Tejada. Let's take a look at this, guys. This slide in the playoff game the other night. Is that suspension worthy?
You know, again, we're playing the result here. I think if Ruben Tejada did not break his leg, I think we view this a little bit differently. Chase Utley thought it was a good baseball play. I think it was dirty, whether he breaks his leg or not. But I think the whole rule's dirty. And so but you can go across the entire echelon of baseball and find this everywhere. But I think it happened between an LA team and a New York team in the middle of the playoffs, and a guy broke his leg. That's the reason why it has become a big deal. I think baseball needs to do something about this overall, not because of Chase Utley, because it's the right thing to do. This just brought a bigger spotlight to the whole thing.
I agree. It's just, I guess the thing that I'm left with is just a shame. I mean, here it is, you know, right at crunch time when it's playoff time and great player is done. I think the slide was out of bounds. I think he went too far with it. I just hate the guy got injured.
For them not to do anything during the game, the umpires, what does that say for them?
Well, their hands are kind of tied because Major League Baseball has all these rules and parameters about it, and they're even tied in the offseason when they go back to try to do this in collective bargaining because the players have so much power. And I just don't know if baseball will adjust itself to make this different. If any time is the time, this is the time to do it.
These plays can happen when you're trying to go home. You know, the catcher's blocking the plate and you run over the catcher. Hey, a pitcher can throw high and injure a batter. I mean, all this stuff's a part of baseball. To me, the timing of it was just what was so unfortunate.
Exactly.
Well, let's go back to college football now with our Pick Six part of the show, and let's take a look at our standings so far. There you see Gerhard and I both were 5 for 1 last week, 19 for 5 overall. Mickey as well, 5 for 1 last week, 18 and 6 overall. So Mickey's got a little catching up to do. But here is our picks for this week. First off, Alabama, Texas A&M.
Mickey talks about the hard games, and Cleveland County Sac is going to be the hard. But this was honestly another hard game in College Station. I just want to so bad to say Texas A&M. But I just something about this Alabama team. I don't know what it is. I'm going with Alabama reluctantly.
I'm picking Texas A&M, but before my Bama friends get mad at me, if Alabama wins this game, they probably win out.
Yeah.
I think this is the key game for Alabama.
I'm the same with Mickey. I think this is a very deciding game, but I'm going with Alabama because I think they have that in them. They didn't play good against Arkansas last week, but I think they're going to bounce back against Texas A&M this week. JSU, Tennessee Tech.
This one, to me, is easy. It's just like the Mississippi Valley State game. I think JSU's finally got everything rolling. Now they have an off week. They're reset, they're refocused, they're prepared. I think JSU wins big.
JSU as well.
I'm going JSU as well. Auburn, Kentucky.
This is another tricky one. It's a Thursday night game in Lexington with the team in Kentucky that has now turned it around. And you know everybody and their grandmothers going to get themselves out of basketball practice watching and go to this football game and support the Kentucky Wildcats. I like Kentucky. I like where they're going. I just think Auburn has done enough up until this point and refreshed up until this point. They'll squeak out a win in Lexington.
Well, you know, there's a reason I'm trailing you guys is because here I am picking Texas A&M and Auburn. I'm picking for Auburn and against Alabama in the same week. But I'm going Auburn. If Auburn loses this game,
it's downhill.
It's done. You know, so Auburn should win this game. They've got more talent than Kentucky. If they don't win this game, it won't be because of players.
Yeah.
I like what's going on up in Kentucky. I'm going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats in this one. Florida, LSU.
Yeah, this one's easy now. It's LSU, and it's what we talked about earlier with Will Grier. I just don't think Harris has enough. I think that the momentum's kind of sliding. Second game in Death Valley in a row. I like the Tigers.
This could have been an upset had this not happened because I think Florida has enough to slow down Fournette and force the quarterback to win the game, but going LSU now.
I'm going LSU as well, but I think Sunday I would have had a different pick.
Yeah.
Next one, Michigan State, Michigan.
I think Jim Harbaugh has got this thing turned around, and there's something about him. I don't know what it is. He did it at Stanford. He did it with the Niners. This is the first marquee game with the Wolverines. I like the Wolverines in Ann Arbor.
I'm going with the road team. I'm going Michigan State.
I'm going Michigan. I like what Harbaugh is doing up there, getting them fired up in Michigan. Next, our Pigskin Roundup game of the week, Cleveland County and Sacs.
Toughest game of the last 3 weeks to pick. I just think Sacs has enough motivating behind them. They're at home. I think Sacs wins this game. Last possession, closing seconds of the game. I'll be at that game over there at Jack Stewart Field. I'm going to go with the Wildcats.
You know, there's every reason to go with Sacs. Cleveland County doesn't run the ball as well as they did last year. They're at home this year. They've got the revenge factor, but I'm going Cleveland County. I'm
going to go Cleveland County in this one as well, so we'll see next week in those standings. But coming up this Friday night, tune in to the Pigskin Roundup here on TV 24. Of course, you'll see that game, Cleveland County at Sacs. Gerhard will be there with the game of the week. We'll have all the scores and highlights. The Pig Trail will be out at Welborn, Southside, Donahoe, Weaver, Gaston, and more. And be sure to connect with us on social media by hashtagging Pigskin Roundup. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Hope you have a great week, and we'll be back in here next week on The Locker Room.
You know what? One of the things that we need to talk about next week.